So we always love to know where our audience is from. So it'd be great if you could also tell us in the chat maybe what year you're in school and what college you either are attending or hope to attend. We would love to hear that information. It's great for us to know who's around and who's listening. If you are an international student, it's great to hear that as well. I see that Dom has posted a link to the ScholarshipOwl Store, which is a shameless plug that we didn't plan, but as long as we did it, I'll show you.
I figured I have the time, and you were showing it to the camera. I didn't know if that was a cue for me.
No, I just needed some water. So, we're all about grants, savings, scholarships, hard work, and no debt. That's what ScholarshipOwl is all about. But just so you know, we also do sometimes give these things away as prizes and contests we run, so you don't have to spend your hard-earned money. All right, I see somebody did ask a question. That's awesome. We will get to it, but we just want to wait till we're officially live after our start time.
Well, it looks like someone here is from Miami, living in Zanesville, Ohio, planning for Zane State College.
Nice.
Very cool. University of North Carolina at Pembroke.
Excellent. So for those of you who have joined early, we launched this webinar a few minutes early without expecting to. That was an accident on our part. So we're just hanging out and waiting and officially starting in 4 minutes.
This reminds me when I teach and everybody comes in early and you're trying to figure out the start time. There's this awkward silence part. So I'm sure everybody watching this is used to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very true.
Let me see. Somebody here is from Omaha, Nebraska.
Very neat.
LFA school.
Major. Nice.
I was a law major and switched. It's very, very different career.
For sure. I went to University of California, Santa Cruz, got my bachelor's in psychology, and got my master's from National University, the San Jose campus. Rich, how about you?
I was a first-generation college student at Quinnipiac University in Connecticut. No idea what I wanted to do. Went in as a communications major because I thought I was going to broadcast sports. That did not happen. I very quickly, in my sophomore year, changed my major to psych and soc. And then I went to Springfield College in Massachusetts for my graduate degree and got my PhD from Johnson & Wales University in Rhode Island, all in education. But I mean, some of the folks who might be joining this right now, I was very lost my first year. I don't think it was until second semester, my sophomore year, that I actually felt that I got it, that I understood what I wanted to do. I understood the finances. And I've been teaching finance in higher ed for a very, very long time. So I'm very excited about this topic.
Awesome.
Cool. And then for me, I got my Bachelor of Arts in Music Industry, believe it or not, at California State University, Chico. I went in actually to San Jose State at first. I was studying animation, and like many folks, decided that wasn't for me. Shifted gears and started to study music, which clearly it's a far more reliable and money-making career, music, compared to like animation and art. Yeah. So did that and graduated in 2015 and promptly didn't get a job in music. And but I continued on doing what I was doing for a long time. I've been working in marketing and kind of community management type roles for a very long time, since high school. And now I run this ambassador program for ScholarshipOwl, and I was actually an ambassador myself for a lot of companies in college. And so still doing what I love and what I have background in, but very different than what I studied, and that's okay. So if anyone is going that direction or is not sure what they want to do with school yet, don't worry about it. It'll all work out.
Yep.
Definitely.
So cool.
All right, we have successfully vamped until 4 p.m. Hello, everyone. We're going to be now seeing a lot more people log in. So we still won't be starting quite yet because I know most people are just joining. But for those of you who are just joining us, go ahead and say hi in the chat. Tell us where you're going to be going to school, if you're in school already or where you hope to go, maybe what you're interested in majoring in. And we're going to wait just another minute or two and allow more people to log in, and then we'll officially get started. And also, as I mentioned earlier, if you've got any questions that you already know what you want to ask us about, please do go ahead and put those questions in the chat. This is going to be a live interactive Q&A. So we're going to be talking about all things related to college, paying for it, and being successful in college. And also, while you're waiting, feel free to click the link at the top to join our community. This is our online community for Scholarship Owl. It's on Discord and it's free. So whether you're a member of Scholarship Owl or not, you are welcome to join our community, participate in the conversation, join our contests, all kinds of things that we're doing in there. And this is a great time to do that while we are waiting for more people to log in.
And actually, I'll go ahead and for those who started joining, I'll put it again in the chat because I think for anyone who's now joining this moment, they probably can't see the note from earlier. Okay. So 1 second.
Awesome.
I'll broadcast to the room.
All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I know more people are going to be joining us, but I don't want to make everyone else wait. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, and we'll all introduce ourselves. I'm Jen. I'm with Scholarship Owl, and I've got with me today, many of you know him already, Dom. He's the head of our social media, and we have a special guest. We have Rich DeCapua from OneClass, and he is the VP of Academic Integrity. Is that right? Did I have your title correct?
That's
all right.
Correct.
Okay, so Rich, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you said some things earlier, but go ahead and tell us about who you are, what you do for OneClass, and also I know you've been involved in admissions, which I'm sure interests a lot of our students today, so maybe talk a little bit about your background there as well.
Sure. So I've been at OneClass, which is an online academic support company, for about 3 years. That's probably the least interesting thing that people want to hear. 20 years before that, I worked at colleges and universities. So I worked at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, Brandeis University, and most recently at Boston College as the Dean of Students. And so I do a lot of work with students who are vulnerable populations, first-generation college students, students in financial distress, students in need of counseling and mental health support. So that's where I did a lot of my work. And now I work for a company where it's a little different. We're talking about academic support and what that looks like. My PhD focuses directly on the cost of college and what people need to know, what families need to know, what students need to know about a process that is very tedious. It is overly complex, and college is a very expensive thing. So my goal anytime I talk about these things is to demystify all of this and just to say everybody's confused about it. Everybody's looking for a starting point. And hopefully we can have a great conversation.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. So I know some people have started to put some questions in the chat, but Dom, why don't you go ahead and ask a question or so that, we've sort of talked about in advance, and then we're going to be filling in as you guys have questions. Please do go ahead and put them in the chat. We want this to be very interactive. We want to talk about what you guys want to hear. So we'll have Dom get us a start here.
Yeah, so we'll start off with one of these examples we've prepared here, but we'll jump back to the chat after this. And we'll go back and forth. And the more questions you guys ask, the more we will use from the chat, because that's definitely the most important questions. We want to make sure that all the ones you guys provide are answered today. So as everybody here knows, and both the three of us as well as anyone watching, applying for college has been pretty wild lately with the pandemic. It was already difficult enough before the pandemic started, but during the pandemic, it's been harder than ever. Entrance exams have been canceled. Guided tours have been taken off the schedule for colleges, and students have had more difficulty making their applications stand out than ever before in this very confusing time. So to get things started, I'm just curious, what do you guys think? Should students expect things to be more back to normal now? in terms of applying for college going into the 2021-2022 year, or will there still be challenges that students need to keep in mind and be prepared for?
It's a great question. I'll go ahead and start, and then Rich definitely chime in. I think it's going to be maybe a little bit more back to normal, but not as back to normal as it was prior to 2020, right? There are students that still were unable to take entrance exams. Maybe they can take them now, but also many more colleges are now test optional or even test blind. And so there are now certain students that are asking themselves, even if I can take an entrance exam, should I? And if I have a score, how do I know it's good enough to submit? If I submit a score and it's not quite what I think it should be, does that mean that I have a reduced chance of getting accepted? Does it mean that if I don't submit a score, I'll look like I didn't take the exam at all? I mean, so many students aren't sure what to do. And I'll ask Rich in just a second to comment on that, because I'd love to hear your opinion. In general, my thoughts on that is, if you have taken the one of the entrance exams and you are applying to schools that are using those entrance exams either for admission purposes or for scholarship purposes, if you got the kind of score you're proud of, it's worth submitting. But if you're a little hesitant and unsure, you may want to hold back on that. As far as other things, I know a lot of students and parents are wondering, there were students that deferred because they didn't want to go to college when they thought they'd have to be online. So they deferred, thinking that this would be their year that they can go to college. And so now, are there even going to be spaces for me? Are colleges going to be more selective, less selective? The interesting thing is, it's to a certain extent, it's all over the map. Some colleges are experiencing decreased enrollment, so they may be accepting more students than usual. And other colleges were overwhelmed with applications, especially the Ivy Leagues and other highly selective schools, because for the first time ever, students could apply without submitting test scores. So, we have a lot of things going on, and, I don't have a lot of great advice except to say that it's worth visiting every school's website, looking at what the universities themselves are saying, maybe calling the admissions office if you've got questions. If you have an opportunity, especially with private schools, to work with an admissions rep, that's a great place to go to get your questions answered. But I know, Rich, that you've worked specifically in this industry. You've been in admissions and so forth. So what are your thoughts on this subject?
So I probably have too many, actually, right? So I think what you started with is exactly what colleges are hoping for. Colleges are hoping that it's going to go back to the way it was before, and that's not going to happen. I will tell you, what colleges look for more than anything when they are admitting students is, will this person persist and graduate from this institution? They are looking to give money, right? We'll probably talk about the FAFSA and talk about scholarships and money. But when universities are giving out their own money for aid, they want sure bets. They want to say, okay, this person's going to be able to come in and stay here and graduate. That means that when you are applying, the more holistic your application can be, the more well-rounded you can talk about your high school experience, the better bet it is for universities to admit you and then get some money out of it. Now, you also brought up this really important thing is there are enrollment problems all over the country. So if you're looking at higher ed as in terms of finance, it is a buyer's market. There are a lot of places that are looking for students to apply and then go. So I don't think we know what's going to happen with all the test optional, with all of the pandemic, all of the applications. But it's something that you as the consumer, the family, the person actually purchasing the educational experience, it's in your hands to really kind of drive the process, which should make people feel less anxious about the entire process.
Excellent. Okay.
Cool. Well, we do have a few questions in the chat now.
I think he's back. He's coming back.
So if anyone is working on getting their laptop for school anytime soon, be wary of touchpad for Mac. Sorry. And of course, the entire chat refreshed for me. I don't know if you can see a question that we can grab for now, and I can grab one as they come in later on.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and grab one. Let's see here. I've applied for multiple scholarships on different sites, including ScholarshipOwl, and I just can't get through on any grants or scholarships. Any suggestions on actually getting them? That's a great question. I don't know exactly what your situation is. Obviously, with scholarships and with, well, let me start off by saying if you are an international student, you're not going to qualify for federal or state grants. For those of you who are not international students, definitely submit the FAFSA. Even if you're not sure if you'd qualify, if you assume you won't qualify, do submit the FAFSA. Because sometimes you may qualify for things that you didn't know you would. And also, more importantly, in many cases, universities that give out scholarships to students want to see that FAFSA come in before they will consider you for scholarships. So whether you think you're going to qualify, do fill out the FAFSA. As far as scholarships go, apply for scholarships in your community, the local scholarships from the universities you're applying to, and also private external scholarships like what we have in the ScholarshipOwl platform. There's no guarantee that you're going to get scholarships, but what will increase your chances of getting scholarships is by applying to as many as you can and applying year round rather than just like going in a flurry for a couple of weeks and applying and then forgetting about it. You really want to integrate applying for scholarships into your life while you are a high school student and college student. And also looking at not just applying for those really easy one-click button and apply scholarships, right? Those no essay scholarships that students love but rarely win. Why do they rarely win? Are they scams? No, they're not scams. But if you want to apply for a one-button scholarship, so does everybody else. And so you're competing against thousands of applicants. And there's nothing wrong with applying for those scholarships. They're super easy. You should apply. But also apply for the ones that ask something of you, because you would be astounded at how many scholarships people just don't apply for because they are asked to do something. And it's not always an essay. Sometimes it's uploading a video that you may have created. Sometimes it's just sharing a social post and hashtagging it. There's all kinds of scholarships. Most of them do not necessarily, I shouldn't say most, many of them do not require essays. But if you never apply for the scholarships that ask you to do anything, your chances of earning a scholarship are going to be very low. So, those are my thoughts about scholarships. And if you are using ScholarshipOwl, not that I want to talk a lot about ScholarshipOwl specifically, but with ScholarshipOwl, all the scholarships in our database are really easy for you to apply for. You can apply for anything in your match list. So you don't have to worry about, do I qualify for this? Is the scholarship still open? Is it closed? Is there something wrong with my background that will make me not fit? No, everything that's in your match list is something you can apply for. And you don't even have to fill out the applications, because with our software, when you fill out your profile, all of that data is submitted as part of the application. So all you have to do is attach your essay or your video or whatever it is that they've asked you to do. And yes, for those of you who are wondering, we do have many of those one-button apply scholarships anyway. So, we make it faster and easier for you to apply for scholarships. But please do not forget to apply for scholarships that are local in your community and university scholarships. They're really important.
And to that end, I'll just add one last piece of information to that. I do remember one question before my page refreshed, and someone had asked, what are some great sites for getting scholarships? And so I wanted to clarify that, well, ScholarshipOwl is a great option. There are tons of options out there, but the benefit of using our tool is that pretty much everything you're going to find online, we very likely have it in our database already. It's all one place as opposed to having to go to a variety of different sites. So if you're uncertain where to begin, ScholarshipOwl could be a great place to start. And then if you want to expand from there and try to find some other stuff, other sites, other scholarships outside of ScholarshipOwl, that might be the next course of action. Why don't we jump back over to our pre-planned questions here.
Okay.
Here's let's just shift gears a little bit and go down the pipeline of more so related to paying for college, financial aid, scholarships, that sort of thing. As the cost of college continues to be challenging for families, both during the pandemic and after the pandemic, besides submitting the FAFSA and applying for scholarships, what are some of the more creative or lesser known ways to reduce college costs?
That's a great question. I'll start. I'm sure Rich has a lot of great ideas as well. So first of all, a great option for anyone, whatever your situation, is to start at a community college. It's a great place to start. It's the least expensive way to begin your college education, whether you want to get, a certificate or an associate degree, or if you eventually plan to transfer, it doesn't matter. Starting at a community college is a low cost, great way to go. You can also get scholarships from community colleges and scholarships in your community and private scholarships that can be used at a community college. So even though they're low cost already, you can even reduce that cost further. And depending on the state you live in, your community college tuition might actually be free. Like in California, if you're a full-time student, you can go to college for free for your first 2 years at a community college. And I know Tennessee has a great program. There's a handful of states now that offer free tuition for community college. So that's always hands down a great way to go. Other things you can do, if you're familiar with tuition reciprocity programs, that's a big word, reciprocity. Basically, colleges that are in certain states have arrangements with nearby colleges in other nearby states. So for example, if you live in the western part of the United States, like I do, many colleges are part of the WUI program, or the Western University Exchange Program. And I know there's other ones, I don't remember all the acronyms, but basically there's a Northeast version of that. There's a Southern state version. So let's say if you live in California like I do, and you are interested in going to the University of Nevada, in Nevada, we have an arrangement where students from California can pay 1.5 times the cost of tuition to go to schools in Nevada instead of double, which is often what it costs when you go to an out-of-state school. So that's one way. If you want to go out of state, if there are colleges in nearby states that appeal to you, you might be able to get not in-state tuition, but at least less than typical out-of-state tuition. Other things you can do is you can apply to colleges that have really interesting co-op programs where you can maybe work and help pay for your college that way. And so there are some colleges that are actually have free tuition for students that are actually willing to work in exchange for their education. So that's not well known, but you can look online and there's a whole list of schools that will do that. I know Berea College is an example of a place that offers free tuition for students that live in certain states in the Appalachia and places like that. So those are my immediate thoughts about creative ways to reduce your cost. And of course, there's the obvious, right? Get a job after school, get a job in the summer. Consider applying for work study. If, when you apply for the FAFSA, check the box yes that you're interested in work study, so you can be considered for that. Because even if you qualify, if you don't check that box yes, you will not be offered work study. So that's just a very simple thing to do. Rich, what are your thoughts?
So I would second all of the things that you just said. Community colleges are always a cheaper option. I think it goes to mindset as well. When people are in high school and they are applying to college, they are so consumed with what their friends are doing or what their friends' parents are telling them to do that they think that my experience has to be that experience. So the first thing is you got to do what's right for yourself. And you got to have a real conversation. Am I ready to do a full-time college load? Am I ready for 4 to 5 classes a semester? Can I afford that? And then you got to take all of those things into account. Especially, I'm right outside of Boston, so up here in the Northeast, we have a lot of colleges that you live on campus, that you live in a dorm, and that's a huge cost. Do you really need to do that? So you need to figure out for yourself when you're applying, what are the lowest cost options, and also what is the best for me, and not what are other families and friends doing that I think has to be like that, because if I don't do it like them, my experience won't be as valid. That's what I see a lot of, especially in the admissions game. And going back to the other question, if you are applying to college, people think that the only folks they can talk to are admissions folks. You should be talking to somebody in financial aid at the institution that you are applying, just like you would talk to an admissions counselor, and really have a conversation about what are the things that your institution would offer me should I be successful academically and I get good grades. What would that process kind of be like? You also want to ask really good questions about tuition tends to rise every single year. So the price when you start is typically not the price at the end. So you want to know, okay, over the 4 years that I'm here, what are the costs going to look like? How am I going to offset all of those things? But I can't stress enough the community college option. People think it's less valid. I think it's the best thing that anybody can do.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing to that. One option is to go to a community college that isn't near your home, that maybe is an hour or more away, where you can maybe live in in an apartment with roommates, and you'd still get that living away experience, but then you pay less tuition. So it's going to be sort of that in between, want to get away to college, but really don't want to pay $25,000 or more per year to do it.
Right.
There are so also are community colleges that have very different campus experiences than others, right? Like some community colleges are very small, some actually are pretty big, and are very similar to a public university, that you might be transferring to. So do the same kind of research you would do for a four-year university, and you might find a community college that actually like.
Well, yeah, of course.
All right, we have someone here in the room with us. Tell us who you are and what question you have.
My name is Allison Matchett. I'm very new to colleges. I started out at a community college. So I'm now taking classes at Strayer University. I mean, I'm not too good with the internet, with finding scholarships and all that. It's been very, very difficult.
Okay, so my first thought is that you probably need to make an appointment with a financial aid advisor at your college. And the reason I say that is that in many cases, the financial aid office can provide you with emergency grants, special supports that are financial that wouldn't normally be, let's say, promoted by the school, but they often have special funds for students with unique situations and challenges. So that would be the first thing I would do.
Program. There is a program through the school that's called SOAR. I've tried it, but it's never really helped.
Okay.
I've also gone through the MSA program and hasn't helped me yet. So I don't know what else.
Have you met with a financial aid counselor at school?
Well, my school is technically in Washington, D.C., and I'm in Arizona.
Okay, so you're going to school online?
Yeah.
Okay. Usually most colleges, even if it's an online school, they usually do offer virtual appointments, whether that be a Zoom appointment or over the phone. I know you've had some challenges with your computer, so maybe a phone call would be better than doing a virtual appointment.
I've been talking to my, academic coach, but I just finished my first semester. I'm waiting for the next one, which is October 4th. So now it's just kind of trying to figure out how can I help my kids now that I'm on vacation temporarily, but till the 4th.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to figure things out.
So Rich, I know you've worked with students that have challenging circumstances. That's one of the things you said at the beginning. What would your first suggestion be for her? And I realize we don't have time to really delve into your personal situation here. So what would be the one thing you would recommend that she do right now?
Yeah, I think this is, it's so hard to hear about your experience. And I think this is the reality of people who are attending college. They have these very complex family situations that are tragic, like what you were talking about. I would love to talk to you offline with your info. I know we have your information from logging in, and maybe we could have a chat about some things, but it sounds so cliche, but it is really talking to somebody in financial aid. And I think you have to prepare for that conversation to really tell your story, because financial aid people, they think that most people think that they're cold and they just give out money. They really want to help. And there's a high probability that they would help you out financially in whatever way that they can if they knew the situations and the scenario. But obviously, you have dependents too, and so I think the question also is, at this point, does it make the most sense for you to continue with college? And if you are, what is that going towards? What type of degree, what type of career, what does that kind of look like? And maybe financially that's the right thing to do. But it also might not be the thing to do right now because you got a lot going on in your life for sure.
And also, my school is very supportive to me, but my dad is not supportive. Mm-hmm. He is more like against me going to college. I mean, I just passed all my classes, even though I've been going through all this. I've been passing all my classes. But my kids mean a lot to me. Their dad means a lot to me. Well, I'm going to marry him anyway. But right now, this is, I need to do my college education. And
so I'm going to have Dom message you, and then you can respond back to him with your email address, and hopefully we can help you. All right. Thank you so much.
I just sent you a message, so look out for that, Allison. It should be in the chat right now.
All right, so let's go through the chat and look for another question here. Dom, do you want me to find one, or can you find one?
I actually saw one that I think is super interesting and would have a great conversation behind it. Someone asked, how do you balance academics, extracurriculars, and exercise, or whatever your hobbies are? How do you balance all those things at the same time?
Yeah, I'm going to let Rich take that one, because this gets at the heart, I think, of balancing academics with all of those things. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, this is without a doubt the #1 challenge of a first-year student, going from very regulated high school days where you start and you end and you have sports and it's all set out, it's all on a grid. And then you go to college and all of a sudden you're taking 4 or 5 classes. Some are at 8 in the morning, some are at 7 at night. And so you have more time than you actually have ever had in your life. So managing that and figuring out what your schedule needs to be. And I can't tell you how many students that I've talked with over the years that it's really eating right and exercise and getting sleep is the basis. It's the foundation of everything that you do. If you're not taking care of yourself, and I don't even mean physically, if you're not taking care of your mental health well-being, right? I saw somebody in the chat who said, maybe from the last person who was on, there are people at the school who maybe could help you out. When you're paying to attend a college or university, you have the right to all of the services that institution offers. And that is from fitness and well-being to mental health to just diet and exercise. But it comes first with managing your time and getting a really good schedule. I can't tell you how many students probably listening right now who on Sunday are just saying to themselves, oh my God, I can't take this week. I don't even know what's going to happen, because they haven't scheduled those things and thought about that. This is a really great opportunity to talk to your academic advisor or a faculty member who you're close with to kind of help you out with that skill set. But I've done orientation sessions for students for decades, and that's always the #1 thing, is how you manage your time will lead to all the success that you will have in the 4 years at your institution.
That's awesome. So piggybacking on that, because I agree time management is most important, what tool do you think is the most important for time management? Using an online calendar, something else?
I would say, for me, I like something tactile. I like to be able to write something. I like to be able to do all of these things. I think what has made it more difficult for students nowadays is that everything is online, and there are multiple calendars happening, and there are multiple things. I think the mistake that students make is, I'm going to get involved, but then they stretch themselves too thin. They try to do all of these things all of the time. The most successful students are the ones who find the 1 or 2 things that they are really passionate about outside of classes and really dedicate their time. And over the 4 or 5 or 6 years at that institution, they grow into those opportunities. That's what companies are looking for when they are hiring students. Not just the good grades, but somebody who has really taken that time to expand themselves and, grow in these kind of leadership opportunities. So get involved, but don't overextend. And if you have family members who are saying academics is #1, that's all you can do, you need to really think critically about that advice about how to be successful. Because I've seen a lot of students that all they do is academics, and they are not happy. They are not doing well at that institution, and they are not marketable to companies.
Awesome. All right, we've got someone else joining the room. Can you tell us your name and what question you have?
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes,
I'm trying to get my camera on. Oh, this is fun. All right.
There should be an icon for your camera somewhere in the center of the screen.
Okay.
If you're able to turn it on, that's great. If you can't, you can just go ahead and ask your question too.
I'm trying. It's not working on my end.
Okay. Go ahead and ask your question.
All right. So I am 42 and I am majoring in social and criminal justice. And I'm going to tell you, so many things didn't nobody tell me when I was a kid going to school. But my thing is now that I'm trying to, I guess it's weird looking for scholarships and grants because the age group, right, is a lot of them, at 42, not what would they call us as adults? Either lifelong learners or it's another term.
Yeah, re-entry students.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And I'm like, I'm undergraduate.
You know what? You would be surprised at the number of scholarships that you can qualify for as an older student. And I know what you mean. I know typically that, the vision is, everybody that's applying is going to be 18 to 20 years old or something like that. I think Dom, are you trying to share your screen?
No, that wasn't me.
No, see, that's what I'm saying. Mine just is having an attitude. My laptop's having an attitude, y'all. So I'm just gonna tell you that now.
Okay, all right.
So that's what I'm trying to do at 42. Is I have to read all of the stuff for everything to try to do it.
Yeah. So first of all, if you are a member of Scholarship Owl, as I said earlier, once you have joined Scholarship Owl and you get your match list, there are all those scholarships that you can qualify for. Also, your university, are you attending a university right now? Is that right?
Yeah, University of Arizona Global UAGC. It used to be Ashford.
Yeah. Have you contacted them to ask about scholarships that you would qualify for?
Yes, and the only thing that they sent me back was like stuff for y'all, Scholarship Owl, and FastWeb. I'm very specific, and so I was like, "What about my age group, right? Just in case I may not, be able to do that." Sure. Although I have to say, I used to work with a superintendent, and he told me, he said, "Look, I just applied for everything, regardless if anybody else didn't do it." So I'm kind of going off his mantra, but still,
Yeah. I will tell you, I get questions from students all the time, and they'll say something like, I want to apply for scholarships related to my major, and they'll tell me their major, and then they'll say, I can't find enough, or there's, I'm having trouble finding these for my major. And my answer is always, why are you only looking for scholarships that apply to your major? That you should be applying
I'm telling
for.
You that my laptop is just persnickety today.
That's okay.
It's a lemony snicket. So I'm listening.
Yeah. But definitely apply for scholarships that expand beyond whatever narrow criteria you're looking for yourself. So in other words, don't just look for scholarships for older students. Look for scholarships you can qualify for. And there are going to be many more than meet whatever narrow criteria you might be focusing on. And as I said earlier, don't just apply for the easy ones. Apply for the ones where you have to apply some effort. And follow the instructions in the scholarship. I cannot tell you the number of students who apply for scholarships and do it so quickly because they're just trying to get it done and they don't actually follow the instructions and they automatically disqualify themselves. So it's not as hard as you might think to find scholarships you're qualified for. The harder part is actually taking the step to apply. And that's where a lot of students stop, right? They stop because they get frustrated and they don't apply.
And I know like all the ones that are older and younger in the chat, since whatever's on my screen just acting a fool. I just want to encourage y'all to keep on going, keep on applying, keep on doing whatever. Don't sit and let somebody else stop you from whatever you got to accomplish, because it is that important for what you want to do. Something happened to me and my twin daughters at the beginning of last year. And literally it was the catapult for me saying, dang it, I'm going to get my JD, period, from what happened. And we won the case, but I'm just saying still. And that was the catapult. So I'm glad, looking at Scholarship Owl and all that, I did find, what's the current one? Atlas Shrugged for me. And so now when I read Atlas Shrugged when I was like 15, totally different viewpoint when I'm 42, And so thank you. I did find that on you all scholarship site. So thank y'all.
You can also join our community. There's a link that Don put at the very top of the chat. There's great advice and suggestions about scholarships and paying for college and tips and tricks and strategies, not only from myself and Dom, but from other students in the community. And some of them are older students. And so we all share ideas in there. So definitely look there as well.
Okay. I'm going to get off because I can't see the chat because it's just being a hard-headed machine, y'all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
And I'll just add one more thing to this discussion around, the misconception, and it is a misconception that there's a certain age where where you'll be less likely to qualify for scholarships, or that going back to college is challenging. Don't forget that having more experience is not necessarily a bad thing, right? So if you're 42 and you're going back to college, you know a lot. You potentially know a lot more than students going in at 20 years old trying to start their life for the first time. So use that experience when you're filling out applications.
For sure.
Show them why you're qualified.
Definitely. All right,
cool. I was gonna say, unless you had one in the chat that you saw you liked, I was gonna go back to the.
I was gonna suggest going back to the document as well.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. So let's see here. So this topic of mental health and school life balance has come up a couple times now. So I think it would be a great transition over to that side of things. Maintaining your mental health and taking care of yourself was hard enough before the pandemic when you're trying to go to college. Now there's all these other challenges that we are facing as a society, and we're just trying to. At times, I feel like we're trying to just kind of hold things together, and keep moving forward. And so, I'm curious if you guys have any suggestions of, just overall, what other kinds of resources are available to help support students who are either transitioning into college for the first time or maybe transitioning back, and who are just trying to get back to reality throughout all this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to let Rich take that. I might comment after. I'd love it if you can comment also not only on mental health, but also on academic supports that are available to students, because that's often the fallout. When you struggle emotionally, you also struggle academically.
Yep. So, this is the topic that probably out of anything I've ever done at a college or university is just the most meaningful to me, because if you're not, again, taking care of yourself, you're not going to be successful in anything else. And there needs to be an understanding that college itself is a naturally anxiety-producing environment. You will feel pressure. You will have stumbles. Everybody has that. The thing is, people don't talk about it. So there's a stigma around mental health, where I think the younger generation actually is more open than my generation about talking about these things. And you need to know that any institution that you attend, there are a number of resources that are there for you. People just think about the counseling center, and that's fine. And you should engage with that if that's what you know that you need. The biggest thing for mental health well-being is, can I find places on campus that are support systems for me, that these are people who I can confide in, who I can talk to, have similar challenges the way that I do, or going through the same things, because everybody's going through it, but they don't want to talk about it. Because there's this sense of, okay, I graduated high school, I'm paying a lot of money, I should be really good at being a college student. That takes a lot of work. So first is the understanding that all of those challenges, everybody is having them. And that you should feel free. We were talking about this on one of our pre-calls. When you go to the academic tutoring center on campus, the people who are engaging with that are already ahead of the game. They already know these are the things that I need to get better at to get better in my classes, and then get all that type of stuff, right? So it's identifying, here are the things that I need. And it's not something that is shameful or should have stigma. It's, where can I find the resources that can help me out? I will say that most recently, college presidents in the U.S. were all surveyed on this, and they all say that the number one issue for their institutions is the mental health well-being of their students, faculty, and staff. So they know that this is a huge issue. And I would guarantee that wherever you're attending or looking to attend, this is a focus for that institution.
So I want to kind of piggyback on that and say something else too, and especially for those of you who are students or parents watching. I think sometimes students that are struggling in high school, and then when they do transition to college, sometimes to a certain extent, they already kind of know how to access resources because maybe they've already accessed resources at their high school or from their community, from doctors, mental health professionals in their life. And parents, are usually really kind of on top of making sure those students get support. I think some of the students that really struggle when they get to college are the ones who did great in high school. They did really well academically. They did well emotionally. They were social. They were leaders. Everything was going great. And then they get to college and all of a sudden things fall apart and they don't know why. They don't expect it and their parents don't expect it. And so, in many cases, those parents and students didn't even visit the Student Services Center to find out about those resources during their college tour, for example, because they didn't think that their student would need it. Yep. So I think it's really important that no matter where you are academically and emotionally and socially as a high school student, you're going to encounter certain challenges in college that you don't anticipate. And so it's really important to be prepared for that, not feel guilty or bad about it, and not to allow whatever struggles you're having to take you down because you don't address them right away. And like you said in the pre-call, one of the things that I learned from the college that my daughter was attending when I went for parent orientation is that colleges have discovered that if a student is unable to make just one friend in the first 6 weeks of their college education, that the chances of them dropping out increase exponentially. Yep. Because they need that person. They need that person to make them feel at home. And that's often not going to necessarily be your college roommate. And sometimes a college roommate can be a great support. Other times it can actually be the opposite. So these are all things that I think families need to know about.
Yep.
Just
to jump in really quickly, because you brought it up and I have to say it or I'm going to forget, is because we have so many students attending college now who know that they need support, who maybe have documented disabilities that they need help with. Almost every institution has something called tuition insurance. So when you are applying and accepting, offers to go to college, you need to look into those programs, especially if you know you're not a strong student or you know that you don't have a lot of support services. These are things that can be really helpful in terms of the financial aid package for not being on the hook for all of the tuition. And I've seen so many students who, because you really don't know how well you're doing until you're well into the semester. And there are certain dates that pass at that point where financially you're on the hook to pay for that. But there are a lot of great tuition insurance programs that could help you out.
That's really good advice. And it's something that most students and parents don't ask about or consider. But I think especially today with the pandemic and so many changes going up and down, am I going to be online? Am I going to be in person? Some kind of hybrid. It's something that families may want to consider. Just so you all know, Dom messaged me that his computer turned off randomly. I'm hoping he's going to be able to join us again. But whether or not he can, we're just going to keep going. We're doing fine. I do want to ask you about some of the academic support that is available from OneClass. Most of our viewers today don't know what OneClass is and what you guys do and how you support students. I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk about that.
Sure. Hold on one second. Now
sorry about that, everybody.
There we go. I'm going to put a link to some of the things that we do, which is all about, in my experience, the students that are the most productive, the most successful, are always looking for services. They're always looking for the things that are going to help them do what they need to do. So what OneClass tries to do is provide academic support to students during times where are the most convenient for them, which are typically late at night, early in the morning, because they're either young and that's when they're up, or they're working. They're working parents, they have kids, and they can't do a traditional 9 to 5. So one of the things that we're really proud of, which I linked here, are our booster classes. We know for a fact that the skill level for math and STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math, have been severely impacted because of COVID. And we know that these high school students who are now going to be attending college are way behind in their skill set. So we have these booster classes that build up a skill to then be successful in those classes. So we do Calculus 101. We walk you through all of those things. We give you a pre and a post test. You take quizzes. It's not a class, and it's in short snippets, because that's what students want. They want 10 to 15 minutes. And we try to teach you about a concept, and so then when you actually get to calculus, you're actually being successful in that class. You can go, it looks like, I mean, you can click and see it. It looks like Netflix. It's a whole kind of assortment of classes that you want to get a skill set in, then to help you into those courses. But I think all of us who work in education, probably the two of you, would agree that the skill set of academic success for high school students we're really concerned about. And we don't want students going to college and getting bad grades and then paying a lot of money, and it just becomes a cycle, right? We want to start building skills before they actually set foot in the classroom.
Definitely. Would you think, for, let's say, for students that are maybe high school seniors right now that are watching, and I'm just thinking, if it were me, taking a booster class during summer between senior year and college seems like a good idea. Is that when a lot of students are taking these classes, or do they typically take them concurrently with their regular course load during the school year?
So we have found that traditional aged high school students really love our booster classes over the summer break, because that's when they have some time and they know they're gearing up into the entire enrollment period. And then we have a lot of older adult students who use them over the intersession breaks. Many of them are attending a community college that might only have classes in session for a couple of weeks, and so they're doing it at their own pace, trying to do like their own stuff and their family and things like that. I think for right now, this is the perfect thing to do to gear up for your AP courses, and everything else is going to be happening for your junior year. So it's great to start it whenever, but right now is a really pivotal time. And then, going into that spring semester and applying and all the fun that's around that.
Would you think, and this is just an idea that occurred to me, would you think this would be a good thing to do maybe in the spring before taking AP exams, to kind of sort of double up on your AP knowledge to prepare for AP tests?
Yeah, I mean, this can really be used for anything, because we're talking about math, chemistry, these things. So it's congruent across everything. So we know that when you take our booster classes for Calc 101, we know the concepts that we're teaching you. Every Calculus 101 class is teaching the same things. Some things are just very, very common, especially within the higher ed community. So this goes back to what we were starting with at the beginning of the session, is knowing yourself. What do you know your deficits are, and what are the things that you have to do? I think what makes us very proud about our booster classes is they are taught by world-class faculty who are really good at teaching online and really good with getting concepts across to students in a technical environment. And I know that's been a challenge for a lot of students. They don't want to do this anymore. They want to be in person. So, and you can click and you can look at some of the videos. We've taken extensive lengths to try to make sure that nobody wants to learn about math. I mean, they don't, right? Very few students are like, yes, tell me about calculus. We have tried to make it as engaging as possible. And then you come out with it saying, okay, not what I wanted to do with my week or weekend or day, but now I have less anxiety because I know these skills better. I'm better than my peers around that. So everything raises.
Awesome. I know one of our summer scholars, we have 4 students who are our summer scholars. One of them, Kimberly, is asking a question. And I think it's kind of funny because she is planning on being a math major. She is a senior in high school, but also going to an early college program to get her associate degree while in high school. And she has a question. She asked, would a booster class help you with a class I'm struggling right now, or more challenging because it might be hard to keep up with different assignments for both classes? Hope this makes sense. So you can answer the question generally, but I specifically want to make sure you respond to her question about homework. Are there homework assignments in the booster classes?
Yes. So booster is the foundation. And then when you keep raising on top of that, we have programs called Homework Help. We have direct academic tutors who all have degrees within the specialty of what they're teaching. It's different than what you get at a college anyway. So typically when you go to an academic support center, you're getting other college students who are kind of good at a subject working with you one-on-one. That is not to say don't use that. Please do if it works for you. OneClass knows that students are looking at these things at 10 o'clock at night, at 11 o'clock at night. They need help. We don't want them Googling things and getting the wrong information. We want them to be able to go and then work directly. So for some students, the booster just works. Yeah, they watch the videos, they do the test, like, oh, I get it. Some folks contact us and say, I need some one-on-one help. I'd rather do this and walk through this with you so I know that I'm getting the concepts correct. So it goes booster classes and then homework help and then online tutoring, or you can do all three.
So, which is great. But just to clarify, if someone's taking a booster class, do they have homework assignments?
They have quizzes that they take at their own pace so that we know that they are understanding the concept. So you watch a video, which is 10 to 15 minutes long. Then you take a 10-minute. We don't even like saying quizzes or exams because that makes people anxious. It's a self-assessment, and then if you get 10 out of 10, you're like golden. Next, I'm gonna go to integers now. Like what. But then if you get it back and it's like, well, you only got 2 out of 10. It walks you through your answer, why you got it wrong. And here's another video to help you understand the concepts. But then if you need that interpersonal one-on-one contact, you're allowed to do that too. That's another option.
Okay. So that's awesome. But the main thing is they do not have to, do assignments in a textbook for a booster class while doing assignments in a textbook for their regular class. Okay.
And I saw somebody in the chat talk about the cost of textbooks and what that looks like. When you take the booster classes, you don't have to pay for any outside materials. There's no book that you have to buy. Everything is provided to you as part of the package.
Oh, that's awesome.
This is super cool to learn about, because we actually have a number of channels that are not related to scholarships in our Discord community. One of them is called like Resources for College. So like talking about one class in there would be awesome, because there's always people asking for advice on SATs, ACTs, just homework help, that kind of stuff. And so this is a great resource that I think a lot of our community members could totally use. So that's awesome.
Very cool.
While I'm too old to say this, it's very cool. And some of the things that I've shown to my daughters, and they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm like, okay, maybe we got that. Maybe we got that right.
Nice. I think also because we do have students who are interested in paying for college, OneClass is doing something very interesting where students can actually earn some revenue from help they provide to students. So tell us about that as well, because there may be some students watching today who feel that they're talented in certain subjects and that they might be able to benefit from this.
Yeah. So if you can click on what I sent and just follow the link, it'll say it'll have a box that says become a tutor. So if you have a academic specialty, and some of the things that we do, and we specialize in STEM, but we do everything, and you can see from the link the list of courses, you can actually sign up to be somebody who is part of our tutor program or our homework help program. And the more content that you provide to our site that people rate as something that is helpful for them understanding the concept, you can get a revenue share of people who sign up for that homework help with you. So you can become a super tutor and just be somebody who's like, I love calculus. And Kimberly, I think was who you said is one of your scholarship folks. She could go online and say, I know what 2 + 2 is, and I can walk you through what 2 + 2 is really, really easily and make you understand it. And then people sign up for her directly to get that help, and she gets a revenue commission off of all of those hits.
That's awesome. And that's also, in addition to whatever financial benefit, there's just the ability to put that on your resume, use that to apply for scholarships and apply for special programs where you can say, look at what I'm doing. I'm an online tutor for OneClass. And, I think it's a great benefit to have that on your resume and on your LinkedIn as you're growing your career.
It's really cool to be able to offer to students money for something that they are already paying to do.
That's right.
To learn calculus or something like that, but now I actually get to use it's not like I'm working at the local mall or somewhere else, which is all fine. But when you can align your work and revenue with your academic goals, we know students are going to be more satisfied and successful with that. So it is very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Dom, do you want to go into some of our questions there and find something? And I'm just going to quickly scroll through the chat as well because I want to make sure we're not missing important questions in the chat.
Yeah. Hopefully, I don't touch my touchpad the wrong way again. I keep missing all these questions every time. It refreshes every time.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, okay, so I'm going to double back a little bit here. Here's a question: What kinds of supports and other programs are available for students who are struggling academically outside of OneClass? So let's say they're using that to best prepare with these booster classes, but then when they're actually already a student, they're finding struggles in different areas. What kinds of resources can they find on campus or maybe just in their community to help support that?
All right, I'll give a brief answer and then Rich, you can chime in. Definitely, as Rich mentioned, most universities do have a tutoring center. Some colleges do have specifically a math center or an English center or a writing center. So, it might not always be called the same thing on your campus. So that's something you definitely want to find out about. Those are services that are available to you. And in many cases, they are free. Or if you don't want to call it free, you can say it's prepaid, right? Because it's part of the tuition and fees you're paying to the university. So if they're available to you, do leverage them. There are obviously, you could access a private tutor outside of your school. But if you can access tutoring services, special support services in school, that's a great way to go, as well as OneClass. The other thing is, and I always urge students, utilize those faculty hours. Faculty is there. They set up hours every week to help students. And, they feel gratified when students come in and introduce themselves and spend that time. And students really benefit. One of the things, my daughter became prolific at attending as many hours as possible. And I think really the faculty knew she was coming when they would see her on her way. She developed a very interesting strategy. She was a good writer, a strong writer, but she would always write her essays early. So instead of cramming them the night before and then turning them in, she would have them ready at least a week ahead and go in during office hours and bring her essay draft and go over it with her professor and get immediate feedback that she could incorporate into the essay. She graduated with a 3.98 college GPA as a political science major. And I think, while she was a strong and bright student, I think a lot of that had to do with the strategies she applied to make sure she accessed the support that she needed to achieve the A's that she personally desperately wanted for herself. So that would be my number one advice, is to access those faculty hours. And of course, then if you have any challenges, personal or academic, if your faculty, if your teacher knows you, it's going to be a lot easier to get the kind of support you need from that professor versus somebody who's never seen you outside of you sitting in the classroom. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that's a 1,000,000,000% correct. No matter what COVID has done and online and all of these things that we don't want to do anymore in the Zoom rooms and all of that, higher education is a people's game. It's about interacting with folks. And this goes back to what we were saying before about time management. If you're setting out your week in ways that are productive in terms of use of your time, and one of that being interacting with faculty members, you're already way ahead of the curve. And faculty members teach because they love the profession of teaching. They love students. They want to interact with them. They want to make sure that they are understanding things. And that personal interaction that you can have with faculty is probably one of the most critical things in terms of your success. Now, that means that you got to do it. It means you got to put yourself out there. It means you got to spend a lot of your personal time doing the outreach and go into the hours. But that's the type of initiative that will get you places in college. That's just the way that it is. Yes, please use your academic support centers, your academic advising office. All that stuff is great. But if you don't have personal interactions with your faculty members, you just will not be as successful as you could be.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, and I'll let you comment because I know you have experience with that too. But I was just going to say also, that's also how you can get letters of recommendation. That's how you get referred for internships and jobs. By making those personal relationships with professors. So Dom, go ahead. What is some of your experience with that?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of take a memory or some memories from when I was in school, and echo what Rich is saying here. As someone who is not always thoughtful about making sure that I am establishing deep relationships with teachers, I know firsthand, how much of more of a struggle it was for me in certain classes, and how much better it could have been. When I hear these stories about students like Jen's daughter, who was every essay getting it done immediately and then talking to the teachers like weekly, I think back and I can't think of a single teacher that I was like that with, and I'm not bragging. It's not necessarily a good thing. I actually have memories of the classes that I struggled in the most. I would kind of end up scrambling to these teachers for help towards the end of my semester, like many students do. And what I found was if I hadn't established a relationship with them, I was just basically one of the many. These students that were just coming at them last minute, begging for extra help, extra time, maybe even some extra credit, doing whatever I could to scrounge up, a decent grade. And, some teachers may not look super kindly to that because they saw all that you could have done the entire semester, and only now you're coming to them. And then they think about all the other students like Jen's daughter, who was always engaged, always being motivated and establishing that relationship. And they want to help those students probably a little bit more than the ones that are coming to them last minute. And so, I can't stress enough that if you have the time, if you're considering talking to students more and getting the help early, that is only going to benefit you. And the longer you wait and the less you talk to them, the more challenging it's going to be. It's a fact.
Yep.
Definitely. All right. I'm going to quickly scroll through the questions here. Well, Dom, you can continue looking at those questions we prepared, but I think there was one that I saw that I wanted us to respond to. Let me just look here. Somebody's asking, will your college grades matter at your first job? Do the employers expect you to know, or do they teach you from the bottom up? I think that really varies. It's sometimes on the application, you're going to be asked what your GPA is from college. Other times they won't ask on the application. And chances are if it's not asked on the application, they might not ask you in the interview. I don't think that's a typical interview question. But employers certainly do care about your experiences in college and about the successes that you've had. And if you think about it, if you're applying for your first job, your first career-related job outside of college, after you graduate, or maybe in your senior year of college, you're preparing to graduate, oftentimes the only experiences you really can talk about in your interview will be experiences you had in student projects, interacting with people you met on campus, with the faculty, clubs you've joined, internships you've had. And so your college experience actually is very important when you are a younger job applicant. As you have built your career, they don't ask you so many questions about college. At least that's my experience. As far as teaching you from the bottom up, yes, they will provide training if they hire you, but they first have to decide they want to hire you. And so what you've done in college does matter. Rich, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and some of my faculty colleagues would probably not be happy with this response, but I would say that 99.9% of employers would rather somebody who has a 3.2, 3.3 GPA, who is well-rounded, was involved during their experience, is somebody that is promotable to the company, knows how to work with other people in group projects and group assignments, and actually understands the art of working with people, rather than somebody who has a 4.0 who did nothing else.
Right.
So you should strive for it all. You should strive for the high GPA and to be super involved, but employers are looking for people that are hireable and not about a number with their GPA.
I do want to take just a moment and talk about GPA for a moment, because I think one of the things that a lot of students don't think about, and it's something that Rich and I talked about earlier, is that when you are applying for scholarships, let's say as a high school senior, you're getting those initial scholarships to go to college, and maybe you want to go to a private school and they've offered you $20,000 a year for 4 years, which is $80,000 over your academics. Sounds fabulous. But oftentimes, an institutional scholarship like that, a college scholarship, will have GPA requirements attached to it. So it might be, yes, you can get $20,000 a year for all 4 years of school, as long as you get at least a 3.2, or as long as you can get at least a 3.5 GPA. And many times students that thought that would be an easy achievement find that it isn't quite so easy when they're in college. And so I think one of the things that it's really important for students and families to consider is, you know, do I have enough money to go to college not only the first year, but am I going to be able to sustain and to be able to complete and graduate from this school if I'm relying on an institutional scholarship that has a GPA requirement? And I think that gets back to the kinds of support services we were talking about, whether it's on-campus tutoring, faculty support, college advising, counseling, and services like what OneClass offers. Because if you lose a $20,000 a year scholarship, not only might you not be able to complete and graduate from that institution, but that's $20,000 a year that no longer is available to you for your education. So, you know, Rich, what are your thoughts about that, about thinking about GPA and scholarships in terms of retention?
Yeah, and I think that there are some really great programs out there. This is when you're doing your research for some schools that will say, hey, Rich, we're going to give you $10,000 in terms of a loan to you. But if you get a certain GPA during this time, we're going to convert that to a grant that you don't have to pay back. So, but these are all very institutional specific. You are most at risk of being in the situation that you just spoke of in those first 6 weeks of the semester, especially if you're a first-year student. That's typically when you're not asking for help when you should. You're not engaging with faculty members like you know that you can, but you haven't grown into all of that yet. And so you don't want to get into a point where the semester began in August, and now we're at mid-October. You haven't reached out to anybody. You're getting bare minimum GPA requirements. And then by the time the final grades come in, the institution says to you, hey, what's going on? Because you didn't meet this kind of minimum requirement that we already kind of talked about. And then the anxiety ramps up, right? So all of these things build upon one another. So the really smart students are the ones that understand the services they need, reach out to them early and often, and engage with their faculty members.
And what advice do you have, speaking of the new student? You know, we hear a lot in this industry, in the education industry, about students who are so excited to start college, they get very caught up maybe in the social aspects of the university, those initial parties that happen, especially during welcome week, maybe, you know, rushing Greek life, right? Trying to get us into a sorority or fraternity. What suggestions do you have, just from your historical experience working as a dean of students, that can really help students and parents navigate maybe those first, you know, welcome week orientation experiences, as well as maybe the first couple of months of school?
Right. This is my opinion and my feeling is, what works with students more than anything is when you are truthful and realistic with them, and be open and say, when you come to college, you're going to be exposed to substances. It might be alcohol, it might be, I mean, there are all these things that go on. If I tell you not to do that, you're going to want to do it more. And if I said, here's the repercussions, you know, you shouldn't be drinking if you're 21, I would not be credible to those individuals. So the only thing that I can say when I'm talking to students or talking with family members is, if you're going to choose that, I can only hope that you're choosing to make the safest choice for yourself and for your friends, and then go from there. And when you approach students in that way, when you put the responsibility of, I know this might be something in your life that you have to make a good choice, and I know that you're going to make the right choice because it's the safe choice, then they start thinking of it differently. They start thinking about the conversations with their family members differently, and they look at the institution differently as well. In my experience, there are a lot of people under 21 who I would never know that they have a sip of alcohol, because they do, and nothing happens because they know how to do it responsibly. And then there are some people who should never have a sip of it in their life, and it doesn't matter what age they are. So it's all about these kind of healthy choices and giving students a skill set of, if you're approached, what are you going to do about this situation? I can't stress enough, though, if we have family members watching, if you just say to your son or daughter, don't do this because you're not 21 or you shouldn't be doing this, that probably isn't going to hold a lot of weight with them.
I'm in a lot of parent Facebook groups, and I think one of the biggest questions that I see, or I guess subjects that gets brought up from parents, is use of apps like Life 360, you know, tracking on iPhones, things like that. You know, how can parents and students learn to sort of create that separation without creating excessive anxiety for either side of that. I think so many times universities will say to a parent, your child is 18 now. We're not going to provide you information about their health. We're not going to provide you information about their academics. We're not going to provide information about, if they're showing up for class, if something's going on. So, how can, and I say this specifically for parents that might be watching, how can parents navigate this sudden change from being in control of everything, or at least sort of trying to be in control, to losing not only the control, but also now they have these ability to track their kids, and the kids may or may not want to participate.
Right. So I think it starts with being realistic. And that's hard for some parents and family members. It's the understanding that the relationship with your son or daughter is now going to be different, and it should be different. And if you have this kind of like plan of, so I'm going to call you and I'm going to text you and doing all that, if they're actually adhering to that, that makes me more anxious, because they shouldn't be interacting with you in that way. They should be figuring out their own social situations, their own timelines. It's not about your relationship with them anymore. This is very family specific, because how we talk about safety with people is very family specific. But I can't tell you how many times, and usually the mother, not to be gendered, who would call my office the first week and say, you know what, I haven't heard from my son in 24 hours. Somebody should go to his room. Something has happened. And that's not the truth. That's not what's going on. And so sometimes I would have to have a talk with Matt or Johnny about, well, this is what you should be talking to your mother about how we are going to navigate these boundaries that should be changing. But I don't know if your family has had that conversation yet. I think for first year students, it is it's the summer buildup. It's all of these little touch points that you should be talking to your son or daughter about once they get in to the end of senior year, to that summer, and then when they actually go to campus, about what will our relationship be. But again, realistic is what needs to happen first.
Excellent. And I think, I know we went over a little bit here. People are still on. I'm glad. Rich, are you able to stay on a few more minutes if it's needed? Okay, cool. Yeah, I can as well. Dom, you can go ahead and scroll through and look for questions. While you're doing that, I do want to follow up and just maybe talk again about that mental health issue. And it kind of results from this conversation we're having. There's a lot of talk now. I've got a bug flying around in here. There's a lot of talk about mental health and anxiety problems for young people today. And in often cases, it's tied to this idea of helicopter parenting, parents that are over-involved, over-scheduling their children, things like that. And so, what have you seen when you've dealt with kids who maybe have experienced this growing up, and now here they are, they're trying to navigate their college experience. They might not know, how to do that, how to create their own time management, their own schedule. So maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. And I think we're talking about two groups of students. We have students that have experienced some type of mental health distress when they were in high school, and then students who experience it for the first time while they're in college. So it's two very different populations. And I think you alluded to in one of your questions before, students who are at the most risk are our high achieving students, the ones who have been 4.0 GPA, or 5.0. Some of these GPAs are ridiculous, right? And they get all these awards, and then they go to class, and for the first time in their life, they're not the smartest person within that place and what that looks like. So these are conversations that family members have to have. But I think the biggest switch is the stigma of mental health in college. It just isn't there anymore. There's nobody who's going to care if you go to the counseling center. To be honest, I've talked to so many students now, it's part of their story. I say, why'd you come to blah, blah, blah institution? And they'll say, well, here are some challenges I had before. I had some depression. I worked this is a very normalized experience, and it should be. Students need to know that these resources are available to them, and they have to make good choices for themselves. And parents and family members have to figure out, how can I support without leading anymore? Because that isn't my place. So it's all about this kind of skill building, this coping skill building, and giving students the ability to advocate for themselves. You know, it's very sad when you work with a senior in college who really hasn't had to do something for themselves yet, that they've had this kind of family help, and it's all well intentioned, but it's not going to be good for you in the long run.
Totally.
All right. Did you see any questions in there, Dom? I know there's a very active discussion, but I think some of it is comments rather than questions. So it's hard
I didn't see any questions in there. There was one question that we had written down previously that I thought was good to go over. Where is it here? Let's see. Oh, so obviously with the pandemic, you know, the way students are making the biggest impact they can, both while in school in college or getting ready for college, with stuff like extracurriculars, sports, community service, other kinds of volunteering, internship opportunities. Those are getting really a lot more difficult to not only get but manage and stay up with. And so, considering the current climate we are living in, what suggestions do you guys have for high school seniors or anyone really who are looking to get those kinds of opportunities, but are having trouble doing it, you know, and so they're now worried that it's going to affect college applications, scholarship applications, getting out of college and feeling experienced enough to get a job. How would you recommend they handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a concern. I think, you know, the good news, bad news of the situation is that students that are going through this and worried about these challenges, they're in the same boat with, you know, thousands, millions really of other students who are going through the exact same thing, who are also wondering how can they stand out from the crowd. This is particularly true with college applications because for many students, their junior and senior year of high school is when they really kind of step up to the plate. They have those leadership opportunities in clubs and organizations they're involved in. Maybe they're getting leads in the school play. You know, they're getting solo opportunities in their choir. All of these kinds of opportunities that when you're going to online school, as so many students did last year and some this year as well, it can be very challenging to get so many of those opportunities. What I would say is not only are other students going through the same thing, but also, you know, as a society, we've learned that a lot can be accomplished online that we didn't necessarily think could be done before. And so students are actually doing online internships, right? They're getting remote opportunities to be peer tutors, to be advisors. They've been able to keep their clubs and extracurriculars going by scheduling Zoom meetings and things like that. And so the interesting thing is, while we've had all these challenges, students have had the opportunity to actually step up and take leadership roles in making sure that the organizations and programs they care about are able to continue. I do some work with a local community college in our area, and I know the business students at that college, they normally, one of their biggest events is that they do an in-person business meeting that they set up. It's like a statewide association, and they have live representation and they coordinate presentations and events, and they have a competition. They had to change and did the entire thing virtually this year. And while it wasn't quite the same experience for the students, they were able to gain new experience and develop new technical skills that they didn't have before. So I guess that's what I would say. It's sort of a good news, bad news situation. Rich, are you kind of finding something similar?
Yeah, I think the unfortunate truth is this is an equity and access issue. We have students that are from sometimes very affluent towns where the transition to online was relatively easy and have resources to do all of their stuff online. I think all of these students are probably going to be writing college essays about what they did during the pandemic and how that changed. I think we have a lot of students from first-gen families from lower income brackets that don't have school systems that have put these types of plans in place. And unfortunately for those students, they need to take more ownership about what those experiences should and could look like. If you don't have access to these co-curriculars, it's something that you or your family, I mean, this is something that you can do with your family, right? This is high school stuff, is figuring out how to reach out and say, I'm passionate about this, but you're not able to offer this because of the online or whatever. How can we figure this out? Taking leadership over those types of things. I think the higher ed community is all in agreement that students from lower income brackets are going to be the most disproportionately negatively affected because of COVID. And for those families, they have to take a lot of leadership themselves, which is unfair. But if I'm talking, that's the advice I'm giving, is you have to be upfront. You have to let people know what you're not getting from your school system. And if it's an opportunity to lead and build something, then you should take that opportunity.
Excellent. Good advice.
Yeah, that's great.
All right.
Okay, well, I think that's all I wanted to cover from our prepared questions, and I haven't seen much else in here. Okay, I think maybe one came in, unless this was already answered. Forgive me. Someone said, I want to be a commercial pilot, but I don't know if I should go to college and get a bachelor's degree or go to flight school. It's an interesting question. So maybe we can rework that question and ask if a student is thinking about going to like a technical school program or going to a public university for a bachelor's of some kind, what do you recommend? Or is there an easy answer?
Yeah, what I would say is you really need to look at the particular career goal you have and research that career goal and figure out what is really required or desired to get started in that field. So for example, and I don't know the answer to this particular question about becoming a commercial pilot, but let's just say that I were trying to find that information out for myself. What I would do is I would do research online and determine what is the minimum credential that's required to become a commercial pilot, whether that's, a commercial pilot in your state or with the FAA, whatever those requirements are. So I would do some online research and look for what the minimum requirement is. And then I would also look for what is the preferred or expected requirement when you're applying for jobs. And I would say that's what I would do for anything. Like there are people that are interested in being an ultrasound or technician or radiologist, or I should say radiography technician, because radiologist is a doctor. There are people that are interested in becoming a veterinary technician. So there's a lot of these sort of what people in the higher education space refer to as middle skill jobs, where you don't necessarily need a bachelor's degree, but you typically want at least a certificate or an associate degree. So you can pursue those careers at a community college very comfortably. But you need to find out what employers in those industries are really looking for. So if the minimum requirement is a certificate or an associate degree, that's fine. You might be able to get your start, but it could be that depending on the field, they prefer a bachelor's degree. And so when you're going out there to apply for jobs and you're competing against other people in your space, it could be that you discover that you need to go ahead and finish a bachelor's degree to put yourself on better footing. And internships and employment in your field are also super important. There are so many situations where someone might have a bachelor's degree, they've done a great job in school, but what they've done is focus more on maybe they've got some social clubs they were in, but maybe they didn't get an internship or an actual job in their field while they're in college. It's going to be much harder for that student to go out and get started in their field when they're competing against students that actually did get internships or jobs in their field while they were an undergraduate student. Mm-hmm. So those are the kinds of thoughts I have. Rich, do you have any additional ideas on that?
Yeah, I think the greater issue with that question is understanding that not everybody knows what they want to do when they start attending college. There are 26 million people engaged in some type of college activity, and a third of those are going to transfer. They're going to go somewhere else. They're going to change their major. This is all very, very normal. Back to one of our earlier questions, if you don't know yet what you really want to do and you're still exploring, is to do the things that you just talked about, is figuring out what's the lowest cost option for me, which will get me towards some type of degree completion. If I don't know what I want to do, and that's fine if you want to go undecided, but I think the better bet is, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, so I am going to attend that community college for a semester. I'm going to take this lowest cost option and kind of figure out and feel around where my skills are, and then maybe I'll transfer somewhere else, which is the most normal thing that happens in higher ed. People don't want to talk about it. They think it's just, I go to one school and I'm there for 4 years and I graduate. That is not the norm. People go to community colleges, they transfer to state institutions, and it typically takes them 6 years. These are all things that we just need to normalize more in higher ed and people going, so there's realistic expectations about how successful you're going to be in this time.
Yeah, and a statistic that I've heard, I don't know if it's changed, but I've heard that the typical college student changes their major 3 times. And so if you think about that, you know, when you're 18 years old, where you are emotionally, academically, physically, all of those things, what you want to do at 18 may very well be different than what you want to do at 20, at 22, at 25, at 30. And also, as we all know, and as Dom himself pointed out, that many times what you major in college ends up not being what you pursue as a career. And that's okay too. That's very common. But knowing those things really can help a student and family think strategically. Because, for example, if whatever that student is thinking about, if that goal has a good chance of changing, then you really have to think about, you know, do you want to go to a technical school that might not have that many options versus going to a community college or university where there's more options to change your major? If you're, for example, let's just say you're thinking of being a theater major, that's wonderful. It might be your passion. It might be what you love to do, but knowing that it's very difficult to make it as a theater major, you know, in life, become a professional actor or actress, you know, is that a good idea? And if you are going to pursue that as a major, should you have a minor? Or if you're going to pursue that as a major, do you want to go to a performing arts school to get your certificate or degree and possibly spend $80 or $100 or more $1,000 to do that, knowing that that might not be the field you end up going into? Right. So these are all kinds of, they're financial questions to ask, they're career and passion questions to answer. But the bottom line is there's always got to be a level of practicality when making your higher education plans, for sure.
And actually, their example hits close to home for me, because as someone who went to, I studied art, but I didn't go to an art school. And I had an opportunity to do that. If I really wanted to, I could have pushed and tried to research a bunch of art schools or technical schools and just focus on that. Because a lot of students want to go to those kind of schools so they can avoid all the GE requirements. They can just focus on their art, which is really cool if you are really talented and know 1,000% that you want to be an artist.
I will be successful at one.
I was not that good of an artist, and I was basically pretty sure that I wanted to do it. It turned out that I decided to not stick with it, and thank goodness I went to a four-year university with a wide variety of degrees. Because even though I transferred to a different school, I was able to get a lot of my GE stuff done, as well as a number of basic music classes done before I transferred to Chico State to finish out my degree. And so if you go to an art school or some kind of technical school with only kind of one idea in mind, and if you're not 1,000% sure, there's a risk that that time and money to go there will be wasted if you're going to go and start over or switch in some way.
Right.
All right. I think we are about out of time. I mean, I think certainly we're out of time, but I think also it looks like we don't have as many questions coming in. I think the conversation has been so worthwhile. I hope all of you watching have found it to be worthwhile. And Rich, your expertise in so many areas has been so helpful. It's been helpful to me, and I know to Dom, and I'm sure to the students watching today. Those of you who do have questions that maybe you think of later on, do join our Discord community and you can ask your questions. If you have questions for Rich, you can message them in the Discord community and I'll get them to Rich so that he can respond to you directly. All right. For those of you who are wondering, there is going to be a link to a replay of this webinar, so you are welcome to watch it later, show it to family or friends. Also, within that email, you're going to see a link to our Discord community. So thank you all so much for watching. Oh, and one more thing, you'll be getting a separate email from Trustpilot asking you to review this webinar, and I hope you take a moment to do that because Rich and I and Dom would all really like to get your feedback on what your thoughts are of this webinar. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, and thank you all for attending.